We all bump up against limitations in life, but can you accept them? Storytelling and sharing your ideas and beliefs. What wisdom might you hear? These are all pressures, qualities, and questions that the Human Design Weather for January 16th to 21st, 2026 bring. Hello, and welcome to the Human Design Weather or Not podcast with me, Margot Fraser. This is our last cycle of 4 of the stages of personal reflection leading up to the Human Design New Year on January 21st. If you missed this before, I put together a set of PDFs with contemplation questions to support using these cycles to contemplate the past year with the view to supporting your intentions for this year. If you're interested in receiving those, you can go to margotgfraser.com/human-design to sign up and receive them. This cycle begins January 16th at 5:20 a.m., going until the 21st at 5:54 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Universal Time Coordinates, that's coming in January 16th at 12:20 p.m., going until the 22nd at 12:54 a.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the Sun-Earth activations because that's 70% of the conditioning field. We have the Sun moving into gate 60, the trait of acceptance and limitation in the root center, the bottom square of the chart. The root center is a motor and a pressure center. It's adrenalized energy that wants to rise up and eventually get to that throat for manifestation. This is part of the individual circuitry that brings mutation, knowing, and empowerment. It's going to bring the pressure to mutate, to bring something new. Its keynote says the acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. We all have limitations that come from outside of you, as well as the limitations of your own body and being. Often you can see the ones coming from the outside more easily, but your mind can also make up something limiting about whatever that is. For example, there's no opportunity for advancement in my job. That's the external. But internally, your mind might be saying something like, I can't leave this job because I need the security and the money. There's nothing else out there right now. Your body also has its limitations. Gate 60 represents the old, the same old, same old. That's the limitation. The pressure this frequency brings is to move out of the old. Let's have something new, something different, something mutative. So it can bring a sense of feeling stuck in the old ways. The pressure is, I need a mutation. If only I could break through. I need a new way, a new direction. But the real key is accepting the limitations that are present until the opportunity for transcending them comes. Acceptance opens the door for allowing a new way through to emerge. That's the transcendence. And like all individual traits, it will come in the form of a pulse of energy and knowing. There's a lot of patience needed here as you have no control over if or when the pulse for mutation, for change will come. So do your best to be open to your limitations, the places where you might feel stuck, and accepting them for what they are now in this moment. No pretending that they're not there. This is surrender to what is in this moment. You can find other things to use this energy on that are beneficial while being present and open to that pulse of mutation, that pulse of energy coming through. And if it does come through, you still have to run it through your own strategy and authority to ensure that it's really correct for you. With the relationship of this trait to the old, ancient wisdom within you may come forward to be applied in an innovative way. However, the way we often see this trait play out in the not self world is as restlessness, and impatience. People trying to force breaking through the limitation or limitations out of this pressure, or denying that the limitation is there and wasting energy then on things that aren't really satisfying. And then you just end up being frustrated. This is energy that can drop into melancholy, like all the individual traits. And here it's the melancholy that nothing is ever going to change. And it can even drop into chronic depression. That's, this is the way it's always going to be. From the start of this cycle until the evening of the 18th, Venus is also going to be in gate 60. Mercury will move into gate 60 on the 18th, followed by Mars that same day at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So we'll have at least two planets besides the sun in this trait for most of the cycle, giving extra emphasis to it. Now, Venus often wants that harmony, so it may support that patience. Mars, though, tends to be hasty. So once Mars is in there, yeah, expect to see that impatience and restlessness playing out in a greater way. And Mercury, well, Mercury's probably going to want to talk about all the limitations out there. If you can bring acceptance, there is that potential for something new to emerge that could really be innovative. But in the collective, again, expect to see frustration at limitations bubbling over with such an emphasis on this trait. Gate 60 is being grounded in the Earth's position. Gate 56, the trait of stimulation, also called the wanderer in the throat center. This is part of the collective abstract experiential circuitry that's about making sense of our experiences so that we can share them. And as humanity, not have to start from scratch every time. Specifically, this is the expression of the mental making sense process. Its keynote says stability through movement, the perpetuation of continuity through the linking of short-term activity. Everything in the abstract circuitry is about cycles of beginnings, middles, and ends. This is a storytelling trait. Stories have beginnings, middles, and an end. This is how it started, and then this happened, and then this, and then this, and it's linking the realizations and ideas that occurred and came out of the experience into that story that's being told, and hopefully imparting the wisdom of that story. There's a movement, and it's in moving through the experience that the stability is found through the wisdom that's gained. This is where we articulate what we believe or don't believe. That's the voice of this throat trait. This is not logic, so there's no facts here. It's through expression of our experiences that we capture and transmit history and the lessons learned. So again, we don't have to start from scratch each time. At the same time, realizations, ideas, and beliefs, they change over time. So there's no need to lock into them. Although we certainly often see people who are fervent, emotional, and intense about their beliefs, even when there are facts that contradict them. You can expect stories to be shared this cycle. If you have a story to tell, whether verbally, in writing, and dance, and music, whatever way it might be, this is going to be a very supportive cycle. Ideally, these are stories that are stimulating and have value. However, if the ego gets involved, and we all know how it loves to interfere, especially in the not so self world that we live in, we're likely to have people simply trying to make an impression on others through wild stories that have no value or really exaggerating what's going on. There's likely to be a lot of sharing of ideas, no matter how trivial. This is a trait that will also have you looking for feedback around any stories, ideas, beliefs that you share. It is collective, so that you know you successfully shared and stimulated others. With the correct timing, according to your strategy and authority, the right people will be stimulated at the right time and be able to engage and give that feedback. So expect the pressure to tell your stories and to hear a lot of storytelling, with some of that being outlandish and just trying to get attention. This is a stop codon genetically. So just because you express these stories and ideas out doesn't mean that they're for you to act on. Most often, they're to stimulate others, for them to take that idea, that wisdom, and do something with it. When we look at the Sun Earth positions together, we may hear or tell stories of limitations and both of overcoming them and the frustrations of them. What we believe could impact the ability to be patient and accept limitations or not. All right, let's look at our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their design is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has a big impact that way. Okay, we have our long-term channel that came in December, is going to be with us until May 13th. So really big impact with it being in play this long. It's the channel of community being created by the nodes of the moon. We have the North Node in gate 37, the trait of friendship and family, while the South Node is in gate 40, the trait of deliverance and aloneness in the ego center. This is tribal. So think about family, community, business, country, whatever that group may be. And it always carries this theme of mutual support. So generally, we're going to feel the need for support and to support. We're going to see who's supported and those who are not. As the channel of the marriage contract and bargains and contracts in general, there's going to be this emphasis on fairness in relationships. What's the give and take there? Expect to experience and see the themes related with the tribe and with this channel, which are loyalty and betrayal, jealousy and friendship, possessiveness, and being able to give generously. There's the negotiation of contracts and the breakdown of agreements that aren't seen as being fair. It can bring a feeling of being taken advantage of, or a feeling of being supported, depending on whether there is that mutual support in those fair bargains or not. There'll be more pressure to come together in family and community and find your place in family. This is the design of a part seeking a whole. Find your place in community, in business, in the totality. It's emotional. So we can also see explosive emotional outbursts if people aren't feeling supported or appreciated or that they're being taken advantage of. We have heightened willpower and emotionality while this channel is present. So willpower that's not being used in a healthy way can be very forceful, very pushy and aggressive. And then emotionality, yeah, the highs and the lows that come with it. Any events that are impacting communities are going to have heightened emotional reactions, for better or worse. There can be both the highs and the lows. We could see people joining communities that are not aligned for them out of this pressure because they're just looking for that sense of belonging. There's also the opportunity to understand in a greater way that living your design, your unique nature, gives you your place in the totality. I should say here too that the channel of community as a channel of bargains and resources is also about trade, this for that. So in the collective, trade agreements will be highlighted as long as this channel is in play. Business, groups, communities, and countries coming together to create new agreements or a breaking apart, right? Both polarities can be there. Okay, we have one channel being created by a transit of the moon. So it's just a little taster because the moon only activates a gate or a trait for about 10 or 11 hours, give or take. This one's coming in on January 20th at 1:37 p.m., going until the 21st at 12:04 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. UTC coming in the 20th at 8:37 p.m., going until the 21st at 7:04 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 30, the trait of recognition of feelings in the solar plexus emotional center. It's connecting with gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center being activated by Pluto. Together, they create the channel of recognition, a design of focused energy. Like the Earth's position, this is part of the abstract experiential circuitry, always trying to make sense. The opportunity is to get clarity from all new experiences that you might fantasize and dream about having in the future to narrow down to the one that you truly desire. The caution is that there can't be any expectations of what that experience will bring, and that there can only be one experience at a time. You truly have to contract it down to that one. Otherwise, it just gets diluted. Plus, you need to be patient in getting that clarity. This is a channel that's connected to the solar plexus with the ups and downs of that emotional wave. That brings us to our long-term transits. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for longer periods of time, years in some cases. So your not self mind can start to think that they're part of you, even when it's something that you don't have in your design. And then when that transit moves on, that can be quite confusing to the mind. Well, let's start with the nodes of the moon, which, as we discussed, are creating that long term channel of community. Now, this is the environment that we're in. That's what the nodes represent, what we see in the world. And of course, we can't separate ourselves from our environment. So we have this background, per se, of both coming together in family and community, as well as seeing the background of those polarities. These gates start in line 5. For gate 37, the trait of friendship and family in the emotional center, line 5 is called love. It can bring this quality of this natural and unaffected devotion to the family, where friendship brings out sharing and harmony, or in the detriment, where there's this emotional dependency that can turn love into hate. For gate 40, the trait of deliverance and aloneness in the ego, heart center, line 5 is called rigidity. This brings an environment of people wanting to do what they want to do to provide to their family, their community, whatever that is, when they want to do it, and not have anyone interfere with that, including when they want to rest. And they'll reject any attempt. This quality brings this real barrier to others trying to pull you out of that. I'm going to do my work when I want to do my work, and then I'm going to rest. And don't interfere with me. And the detriment, which is more likely to be what we see play out in the world at a collective level, it's going to bring an environment where providing what's needed is based on having the ego stroked with no discrimination around motives, right? Tell me you appreciate me. Tell me that you love what I'm providing, and I'll provide it. But that just dilutes the power of the willpower center, because it's doing all sorts of things that it really wasn't meant to provide according to one's own strategy and authority. On January 18th at 2:31 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, the nodes will move into line 4. For gate 37, that trait of friendship and family, line 4 is called leadership by example. It has a developmental theme that says any member of the family may take on a leading role through exemplary behavior. So we'll see those with the highest principles taking a leadership role in the family, the community, business, again, country, whatever it might be, over traditional leaders. In the detriment, however, we'll see this holding on to traditional leaders, even if they're terrible role models. For gate 40, the trait of deliverance, line 4 is called organization. This is an environment where willpower is used to organize the work and provide what's needed so that there is time for rest. In the detriment, no organization. This is the workaholic environment where getting the ego massage by continuing to provide is more important than getting the rest. Willpower isn't infinite. It needs its rest. It needs it to stay healthy. We could literally see those workaholics. I mean, they could drop dead at its most extreme, or we could see more likely a drop in productivity So once we hit this line 4, we may see in the collective environment this kind of dichotomy where communities, businesses, countries, whatever it might be, with unprincipled leaders experience a drop in productivity, while those with principled leaders are more productive. So we'll see what happens. Of course, it can take time to see results of reduced productivity in economic data. Moving to the outer planets, Jupiter is sitting in gate 53, the collective abstract trait of beginnings. This is the pressure to start something new. Jupiter is expansive, right? So all this pressure coming in to start something new that ultimately and ideally is going to nurture your growth. It's starting in line 5 called assertion. Personally, this is going to bring the potential for you to have that assertiveness and determination to stay on track with what you start and then to be able to see it through no matter what. In that assertiveness, it can pull those who would normally oppose your direction into supporters. In the collective, where the detriment tends to play out, there's an over assertiveness. I call that aggressiveness, that instead of maintaining support, actually strengthens the opposing forces in a way that results in the abandonment of the direction one wanted to go in. So, as an example, because we had this in the last cycle, the threats against Greenland that's happening currently now by the United States. We're seeing this coalescence, this coming together of opposing forces to support Greenland. So we'll see what happens there, but that's just an example of in the collective how this is playing out. On January 19th at 7:22 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, it's going to move into line 4 called assuredness. When you start something new, there's always confusion and conflicts that you have to work through. That's just part of new beginnings. This trait can bring the potential for you to maintain your individuality even when things get complex and awkward. There's this self-assuredness that you have the capacity to move through the experience. In the detriment, which is again what we're likely to see play out in the collective, there may be a lack of assuredness through those awkward and embarrassing situations that could lead to jumping out of something that was started and over into something else new. Saturn sitting in gate 36, the abstract experiential trait of crisis in the emotional center. This brings the pressure to actually do it, to enter into that new experience. It starts the cycle in line 5 called the underground, where you can get so nervous about going into something new that you let it go. You don't do it. You abandon going into that experience, which can actually create a new crisis. Now, on January 17th at 12:16 a.m., it's going to move into line 6 called justice. That has a developmental theme that says the inevitable survival of right. In other words, if you correctly enter into an experience for a pure feeling, this is emotional, you will get to the other side. You'll get to that place of having the experience. The thing about the 6th line is that it always wants to know that something greater will come out of it. So it generally won't enter into the experience until it really knows that. Now, this trait is in its detriment. So although the exaltation is possible, you and the collective are more likely to be pulled into the detriment. The exaltation says the knowledge and attendant faith that the powers of darkness eventually destroy themselves. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. The correctness of crisis when it arises out of pure feelings. Darkness here is ignorance. Madness reigns as long as there is ignorance, that not having the wisdom of experience. When entering into it comes from a true and pure feeling, then yes, there's something transcendent that can come out of it, something you never anticipated. The detriment, though, and this is what we're being pulled into, says a profound sorrow and cynicism that is not diminished by the understanding that darkness is self-annihilating. The sorrow or cynicism that comes with seeing that despite the correctness of feelings, there's always crisis. This really demonstrates the cyclical nature of the abstract circuitry. One experience leads to another, and this detriment can be depressive. Personally, you may experience the great hope and great sorrow that this frequency can bring. Saturn could support you in being disciplined in moving through the experience. Collectively, though, there's maybe going to be more of a depressive atmosphere, a what's the point quality. We may see the injustice of those that are trying to hold on to the old ways of operating rather than allowing for change. Because the channel of community is activating the solar plexus center for everyone, it means everyone's going to feel this pressure. Uranus, with its unusual and revolutionary nature, is in gate 8, the individual trait of contribution. It's in line 4 called respect, and it's where leadership qualities can be expressed and contributed by being one's unique self, even if you're not the official leader. It's where the one whose unique contribution is respected can be seen as the leader over the official leader. At a personal level, this can support your unique expression and contribution, even if you're not seen as the leader. At the collective level, we may see the unique contribution from an unexpected individual or in an unexpected way that garners respect and gives them impact and influence above official leaders. Neptune sitting in gate 25, the trait of the spirit of the self, innocence, and universal love. It's in line 2 called the existentialist, which brings the pressure to be here now. However, if the ego gets involved, it can be wanting to be recognized for one's selfless actions and no longer being in that place of innocence and presence. Pluto sitting in gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center, another part of the abstract experiential circuitry. This is correlated genetically with the start codon. We have all the potentials for experiences within us. And this is the trait of fantasizing and dreaming about what we want to experience. But ultimately, we have to narrow it down to the one we really want. So like the gardener who cuts back a plant in the fall so it can be healthy and bloom again in spring, all the potentials are still within the plant to fulfill its potential, right? It can still grow and bloom and leaf out and so on. Nothing is lost in that pruning back. This trait is in line 2 called caution. And it has a developmental theme that says humanism tempered by pragmatism. Second lines always project the trait out. So as we take this frequency in from the transit, it has us projecting out that we have a dream. In the exaltation, there's a conservative nature where you're not going to risk your own security in aiding others. So although, for example, you might dream about helping starving children, say in a developing country, if you don't have the resources, you can recognize you're never going to take action on that. There's a very practical nature here. In the detriment, the ego gets involved and one projects that dream out to get recognition. And you may find yourself or others investing resources into it. However, it's not something that can ever be fulfilled. It's not practical and simply depletes resources. So what I would say about this, this frequency is here, it's going to be with us for a while, is to really be careful with your personal resources and be careful what you invest in. In the collective, we may hear people talking about their desires and others investing in that, but it may not be practical. The second line can be a paper tiger, where it turns out the resources really aren't there to fulfill the potential. I'm going to talk a lot more about that in the next cycle when we have the sun in gate 41 to start the human design new year. In the collective, crises around justice and injustice within communities, groups, countries is a theme through the channel of community and gate of crisis defined for everyone in the world. And we'll see those contributing their individual beliefs that may have no basis in fact, but add to frustration at the limitations present and this rushing to start something new without doing enough investigation. With awareness, there's the potential to transcend limitations through acceptance of them and patience, to attune to your dreams and what's really practical, and possibly entering into a new experience if it's truly correct for you to do so, while sharing your unique and selfless contribution in a way that may stimulate others in your community and renegotiate any agreements that are not just. Remember that for any of these traits, if you don't have them in your own design, it's just pressure from the transit field. You can observe it playing out around you, you can learn from it, but whether there's actually something for you to do with it is according to your own strategy and authority. So don't let it run you. This brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you want to understand the basics of the body graph, what's the red and the black about, the different shapes and the lines and so on, you can grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. All right. So, really pay attention to your work life balance in the cycle. Be aware of the workaholic pressures that are coming in on the 18th. You may find it easier this cycle to express what you believe and your stories with your own unique flair. If you do storytelling work, this may be a really supportive cycle for you. You might notice yourself or others telling stories about overcoming limitations that may inspire you. Be patient with any limitations that you're experiencing and do your best to accept them. Let go of expectations and stay present to any pulse of knowing that could open up a new way to transcend that limitation. Have a great cycle, be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.